This is your complete guide to WUBRG Commanders.
I'm Mia, and I love red-colored sleeves.
I'm BZ, and I love a perfect mana base. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, and you can support us on Patreon by going to the link in the description, pick your favorite tier, then, once you select it, you're supporting the channel directly, and you're going to see some exclusive content in return. You can't get it anywhere else.
Also, we're sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you can save 5% on your total order. That is as much as you're spending there, just 5% completely off.
I think that's on us. You know what? Tell them the Nerds sent you. And Dragon Shield, they got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
And we've got 2 links, EU or US. Wherever you're from, use one of those links to use the Dragon Shield link in the description to buy the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
Supporting the channel at the same time and giving yourself sleeves. That seems good to me.
We love sleeves. Also, we're sponsored by Moxfield.com, the best place to build a deck online. There's going to be an ad for Moxfield somewhere in the video. You can't guess where it is. If you said you guessed and you got it right, you're lying.
Incorrect. You would be lying, cheating, and stealing from the channel. So we'll let you know if you're doing that.
We hate all of that. Also, happy birthday to everyone whose birthday is today and your pets.
Yes, and a channel update. You may have seen a couple, I guess it's like a month ago now, Joe has left the channel. That is still the case. So Joe has left the channel to pursue their own career in YouTube and stuff, and we're going to be supporting them all the way. But the paperwork and stuff is finally done. It's officially finalized. And I just want to say that I'm going to miss Joe. Joe's my best friend still. There's no bad blood. They're going to be doing their own thing. I will definitely let you know when and where that's going to be. They're an amazing partner. I really couldn't ask for anything better. And best wishes to Joe for moving forward.
Yeah, we're definitely going to put their link in YouTube and also on Twitter when they start making content. So go check them out.
Yeah, Cherries is not done. This is not the last you've seen of Cherries, but this is the first you've seen of the complete guide to WUBRG Commanders. This is designed to be like your crash course. Pretty much all the basic stuff you're going to need to know. And the first thing you're going to need to know when you build a WUBRG deck is all of the available WUBRG commanders. What kind of decks can you even make? Well, we've broken every single one of them down into categories, and we're going to get to them right now. The typal categories first. This is your creature type deck focused on 1, maybe more creature types. There's 10 of these. We got Ruka-Rumel, Atagatog, Horde of Notions, General Tazri, Tazri Beacon of Unity, Reaper King, Urtet, Morophon, Najeela, and Corona. They all care about either a certain creature type, or in the case of Corona and Morophon, any creature type.
These commanders usually play to one type of creature. However, there are some that can be a little bit more freeform. There's Morophon and Ruka-Rumel that actually let you have more support for other types that don't usually get those, which you can support with changelings.
Yeah, and one of the draws to being 5 colors is you get all the cards in all of Magic. So a creature type deck, a zombie deck that's 5 colors, has all the best zombies no matter what. I mean, I know there's not too many outside of black, but you get all the cool ones outside of black, so it's a huge draw.
There are some types of creatures that actually have more WUBRG commanders than others, and one of them is slivers. There are 6 sliver commanders to choose from. Sliver Hivelord, the first Sliver, Sliver Gravemother, Sliver Overlord, Sliver Queen, and Sliver Legion. These like to build off of one another, and honestly, they used to be the big boogeyman of typal creature decks.
Yeah, the game plan is just stick all the slivers in a deck. Every sliver benefits every other sliver. So when you have 8 slivers out, it doesn't even matter what they do. You just have some kind of nonsensical, powerful board state. People love slivers. I don't know why they keep printing sliver legends. We have enough. We're good. Maybe just print more 99 slivers. That could be me in the minority, though.
I mean, I think it's just a lot of nostalgia value, and with the newest support of the precon, I think that it's a little bit more playable now.
I mean, the commanders just keep getting cracked. The commanders are all cracked, and then the slivers are the meh part. But slivers are fun. They're really cool. Dragons is the next creature type. There's 3 of them. The Ur-Dragon, the Scion of the Ur-Dragon, and Tiamat. Tiamat tutors 5 dragons. When it enters, Scion can become any dragon when you throw it in your graveyard from your deck, and the Ur-Dragon has Eminence, which is just kind of busted. It's I think the most popular 5-color commander. If not, it's one of them. Sticking all the dragons in a deck, especially with Ur-Dragon, making them all cost 1 less, and then just having this gigantic effect when it enters the battlefield and you attack with things. Pretty tempting. I personally am not a dragon fan, but there's plenty of goodies if you are a dragon fan.
Ur Dragon has just exploded so much recently, especially with the more recent reprints, and it just is so explosive it could just go off so fast.
Yeah, multicolored is surprisingly supported. There are 7 commanders in WUBRG that care about you casting multicolored spells or spells that are 2 colors, etc. Niv Mizzet Reborn is the first one. Niv Mizzet Supreme is the new one that you may not even know existed. It wants to jumpstart multicolored instant sorceries. Jared, Jensen, Gigantha, Ramos, and Omnath, the 5-color one that says, hey, if it's a multicolored card you drew, you get to do stuff.
You might have seen one of the Niv Mizzets and Beezy's decks, the one where he says he can't have only single-color cards and he tries to flip as many guild cards as possible.
This, to me, is the most interesting one because it gives you a really neat build-around goal. You can't play a lot of multicolor cards if you're blue-black or Jund, but this is most of these cards say you need to play all of the multicolored cards. I'm going to benefit you a ton if you just throw all the guild cards, or with Jared and Jensen, all the 5-color cards. This is pretty sweet.
I think this definitely makes for an interesting deck build in terms of restrictions, but some of the commanders that don't have restrictions are some of these good stuff commanders that we're going to list. There's 8 of them. There's Child of Alara, Isika, King Kenrith, Joda, Archmage Eternal, Garth One-Eye, Progenitus, Chromat, and Kyodai. And these just aren't asking a lot of you. They let you play all of your colors. You can kind of cram in whatever you want and take them whichever way you prefer. So these are just good to keep on your deck and just go wherever you want.
Yeah, keep them on your deck. Don't put the commander next to it. Just put them on top so that everybody knows who you're working with at any given time. They really ask nothing of you. I almost think, to me, it's hard to pick a direction with them because they're just I don't know, play Child of Alara and blow everything up. I don't know, Kenneth has 8 abilities.
Yeah.
They're all super good.
I've definitely seen some Kenneth decks political or just trying to get to making everyone gain a bunch of life and group hug. And I think it just can go a lot of ways.
Yeah, even Joda's well, all your spells just cost 5 now. Whatever you want to do with that is up to you. Probably playing big things.
Yeah, Eldrazi usually from what I've seen.
Yeah, you could definitely play some Eldrazi in that one. Next is card types. WUBRG commanders that care about specifically some type of card. Oshintai is enchantments. Cody is non-permanent spells. And then Tom Bombadil is sagas.
I always say Tom Bombadil because of you.
I thought you made me say it.
No, neither of us have seen Lord of the Rings.
Neither of us knows that it's Tom Bombadil, not Tom Bombadil.
But yeah, all of these care about a certain type putting into your deck, just like Tom Bombadil with the sagas. I think that creates a new kind of archetype because sagas didn't have as much support previously. I think the only one was Satsuki or just Enchantments Matters commanders.
I think 5-color enchantments, 5-color spells, 5-color Bombaldi, all decent draws. They're all pretty cool. Next is legends. Commanders that care about specifically legends. There's really only 2. This is Joda the Unifier and Sisay the white one that actually has an activated ability that's WUBRG. Totally fine. I think Joda's really, really, really strong, so that's the big draw. Sisay's cool too. She can tutor.
Yeah, I think Sisay used to be a lot stronger, but Joda right now, I've seen everything get +8/+8 just instantly. It's so powerful.
Joda's messed up. There's one last category. I'm going to call it other because I don't know where to put these cards. It's Sicily and Althelm or Mike and 11. They have friends forever, so you can only play both of them together to make a WUBRG deck. They can bring things back from the graveyard or draw cards. They give you a higher maximum hand size. Not sure what to call that. Maybe that's just a good stuff deck. And then Tazri Stalwart Survival is one of the weirdest Magic cards I've ever read, and it's probably super wonky. I haven't even attempted to see what this deck looks like. I'm curious if you have a Tazri deck, the 3rd iteration. Let me know. But that covers all 41 or 42 of these commanders. That's pretty much the types of decks you're going to be slotted into when you decide I'm going to build a 5-color WUBRG commander. But we've got some other tips for you too.
The hardest part about playing a WUBRG deck is actually just casting your spells. I mean, you just need so many colors to cast them, and how are you getting those every single time? Well, the mana base is the perfect way to refine that. One of the ways you could do it is with fetches and the duels, shocks, and triumphs. Usually all the fetches say find a mountain or a plains, but with duels, shocks, and triumphs, they have multiple types on them. The triumphs will say plains, island, swamp. So you can actually find one of those and not just find basics.
Yeah, this is the key. The key to building a 5-color mana base is to stick as many 5-color lands that essentially tap for any one of the 5 colors in your deck. If every land did that, you have perfect mana and you're never going to have troubles. Fetch lands are just busted. If you have no budget or these fit into your budget, this is objectively the best thing to do, the best way to fix mana. You're going to fetch an Arid Mesa, can go get an Island Plains, a Mountain Swamp, a Mountain Forest, and it's just like, well, then there you go. That's basically a WUBRG land. So duels and shocks have basically have land types on them. Same with triomes, but they enter tapped, and they're all going to make mana fixing just absolutely perfect. Mana base with fetches and duels, virtually perfect, I'd say.
Another way to have your lands tap for multiple colors that might not be on the land themselves is with cards like the World Tree, WUBRG, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. These let your lands tap for, in WUBRG's case, all swamps, Yavimaya, all forests, or the World Tree. They can tap for one of any color.
Yes, they're just going to make it so that you never need to worry about black, green, or anything in the future. Next, there's also just some regular rainbow lands. They don't ask anything of you. Command Tower enters untapped, makes rainbow because your commander has WUBRG color identity. Perfect. Exotic Orchard, I would be willing to bet you're playing against people whose color identities total up to WUBRG, and they don't even have to. If somebody else has a command tower, you just get WUBRG right away. It taps for any color mana. Perfect.
Two other lands that let you tap for any color of mana is City of Brass and Mana Confluence. These ping you for 1 life each when you use them. However, when you use them, you could just cast whatever you want. And if you have the World Tree or WUBRG or Yavimaya out, you can use them for those colors and do not have to pay the 1 life.
Right, but with City of Brass, you always take a damage because City of Brass hates you. Reflecting Pool, if you're already running all of these virtual perfect color fixing lands, this is just another one. As soon as you have Command Tower, you get Reflecting Pool, it's a second Command Tower. As soon as you have a Triome, it's basically another shock land of the opposite colors, it's basically everything.
Battle Bond lands are also a great way to fix your mana base. These actually just got reprinted in the last few sets like Baldur's Gate and Commander Masters, but these are effectively in Commander. Duels, just you can't fetch them.
Yeah, so if you have to fill out the rest of your mana base, we just listed like 20 to 25 perfect rainbow lands. You got to fill it out with some dual lands. They enter untapped. They're never going to let you down. Totally fair. One thing about WUBRG mana bases is that you usually have to ask yourself the question, am I skewing it towards green? Because green is the best color at ramp. I don't want to play Signets, Talismans, Mana Rocks, Thran Dynamo, whatever. I don't want to play all of these Mana Rocks in WUBRG most of the time because green can just do it permanently. My lands aren't going to die to a Vandal Blast. My lands aren't going to die to a Crushed Contraband later in the game. It's much safer, so some decks skew towards green.
I think that when you are considering what ramp you put in your decks, you have to consider whether you can get that green first, second, or even third turn. Because if you're putting a lot of things like Kodama's Reach or like Nature's Lore and that sort of thing, it would be great to get those lands, but if you can't get that first green to activate it, then it's basically dead in your hand.
Yeah, that's one thing about Triomes that I've, at least in my 5-color deck building I've done. Fetches, you want all 10. Dual lands or shock lands, you want all 10. But Triomes, you don't want all 10. What I do is I pick all the green ones, and I put those in. So whenever I'm fetching, my first turn is usually a fetch for a tap land. I can always get a tapped green Triome, and you're never going to not have green.
I think looking at the percentage, like color-wise, of your deck is really important when you're building your mana base. You can kind of calculate the percentages and see how it skews, and then just put your lands in accordingly.
Why would I calculate the percentages when Moxfield.com just shows them right to me? All I got to do is scroll down to the bottom of the screen and go, oh, I have 34% green, but 80% of my lands make green. Well, that might be skewed a little bit too much. I can adjust the numbers and turn the dials as I please.
I actually really love this feature on Moxfield because I'm usually sitting there building my mana base with a calculator.
Oh my God, you do this every time.
I do it in draft even, and I think it really, really helps to see those numbers so I know exactly what to put in my mana base.
Yes, and if you're going to just eyeball it like me, you'll still be happy that Moxfield offers that. So go to Moxfield right after this video's over. Just go on over there.
As BZ was mentioning a little bit earlier, there are some traps that you might fall into when you're building a WUBRG mana base. Because you're trying to get every color, there might be some like Chromatic Lantern or trying to put in too many rocks or colorless lands.
Let's be clear also, this is the non-budget section. Directly after this will be a budget section for WUBRG. So non-budget currently, I think Chromatic Lantern is an absolute trap.
Yeah, and if you're putting in too many signets, for instance, or talismans, they're only tapping for 2 colors, which might hurt you later when you're trying to tap for multiple.
Yeah, I'd rather just Nature's Lore for a land that makes 2 colors or a land that makes 3 colors and have the security that my lands aren't really going to be messed with, unless it's some kind of Field of the Dead, the best land in the universe, then maybe, but not my Overgrown Tomb. My Overgrown Tomb is pretty safe. But yeah, I think When you put fetches into your deck, and all of those rainbow lands we talked of, some of which aren't even that expensive, there is no need for Command Lantern. It just is Manalith. The only thing it does let you do is kind of like turn your brain off to tap perfectly every time. But I've found that like the World Tree also does that. And once you have like 4 Triomes and 4 Shocklands in play, you're good. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, as long as you're not running too many pips within your deck, you should be okay.
Yeah, if you're trying to cast an ultimatum, you might have to look down to your mana base, but otherwise it'll be all right.
Another trap is too many colorless lands. We all love Field of the Dead.
I love it, but even in 5 colors, it's a little risky. Every colorless land hurts a bit.
Yeah. Other ones like Reliquary Tower, we love having no max hand size, but that one colorless mana might hurt you later.
Yeah, it's not instead of a mountain, it's instead of a dual land, so you're missing out on 2 colors whenever you draw Reliquary Tower. I think generally I try to play like 3 colorless utility lands maximum in these decks, and that to me feels like pushing it.
Another trap that sometimes people fall into when building WUBRG mana bases is putting too many basics in their mana base. Things like Kodama's Reach can be really good if you're trying to find the specific color you need, but if you have too many basics that you're trying to find them every single time, then they're only tapping for 1 when you put them down.
The problem with Kodama's Reach for me is that I'm never going to play enough basics to make it good. So if I see Kodama's Reach in a 5-color deck, I'm thinking, you're playing a lot of basics. Dual lands are super huge, and Triomes are super huge in this, at least the 5 Triomes that I'd recommend. So I really wouldn't recommend the Explosive Vegetation, go find basics, because you're going to need like 12 basics to make those things work, and I would rather play like 5 or 6, maybe a second forest.
Yeah, Skyshroud Claim is a great way to get those forests.
That's what you want, because it gets dual lands. You want to find the ramp like Farseek that can go get the typed lands and not just basics. But how about, we talked a lot about the perfect mana base. Let's get a budget.
There's definitely a way to play WUBRG in a budget. However, it's going to be a little less easy than just fetching for the color you need every single time.
It's true. There's other lands you want to lean on. The main one is the Tri-lands. They're not Triomes. You can't fetch them. But if you built a 5-color deck and your only tap lands were all 10 of the tapped Tri-lands, I think you're doing okay.
Your deck would be a little bit slower, but you'd still have the colors you need, which isn't bad.
Yeah, I think the BFZ lands, these are really going to help because you're going to have more basics in a budget deck, obviously. The BFZ enters untapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Whatever I said, you know what I mean. So they're going to be the 5 allied color ones, and they're super useful. They're going to be nice, and they're even fetchable if you do something like the tapped fetch lands.
Another one I love is Path to Ancestry in budget. This is really, really great because it'll tap for 1 of anything in your commander's identity, and whenever you cast your commander or something that shares a creature type with your commander, you can scry 1. So every single time you're casting your commander, bare minimum, you're scrying 1.
Yeah, it's auto-include. Tap lands that make any color, perfect. Path of Ancestry is really, really good. For traps, I guess another land I do like is also the Dominaria United tap lands that have basic land types, like the Haunted Mire, I think, is a swamp forest. I'd rather play that stuff than like Temple of Triumph because there's things like Wood Elves and affordable cards, Farseek, Nature's Lore that you can still fetch them up with, and it kind of actually makes your mana base even better. So as far as traps for this, I think you really want to avoid Rupture Spire, Gateway Plaza, the lands that enter tapped make any color, but they say pay 1 when it enters or sacrifice. It's like, oh no, it's like super tapped.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit rough too if you're playing the ones, I don't know if you like these, but the ones that say like reveal if you have a mountain or forest, because if you're not playing enough of those type lands, it can be a little bit dicey.
Yes, I do like those lands, and I think they're going to be good if you include the Battle for Zendikar Tango lands and the Dominaria United tap lands. That's going to give you a ton of like extra islands for your fortified village.
I think it really matters on what you're building specifically. They're good in circumstance.
Yeah, and then I think another thing you want to do is prioritize card draw to find your colors. If you don't have fetches, if you're on a budget, if you stick more card draw on your deck, you're going to miss less land drops, and you're going to have more of a selection to play. So if I have 4 lands to choose from instead of 2, it doesn't matter if they're only 1 or 2 colors each.
With a WUBRG Commander, you can add any staple in Commander into your deck. So how do you pick the ones that you actually want? I think one of the ways you can figure it out is to avoiding the staples of the slimmest colors. For instance, if your deck is heavily skewing green and blue, it might be hard to cast that Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares because it might struggle to get that 1 white. Another one is to consider less pips in your casting costs. For instance, Counterspell has 2 blue pips, but if you can't get that 2 blue mana every time, it might be dead in your hand. So, or Ruinous Ultimatum is another one. 7 pips sometimes is a lot tougher to cast, so you might want to choose a different type of board wipe.
Yeah, you might want to go to like a Farewell. I could see in a Simic or a Naya based deck. Necropotence doesn't, it's probably not for you. Maybe the 1 mana, the 1 pip staples are easier to include, like a Dockside or something, or even a Swords. But Necropotence, Counterspell, Ruinous Ultimatum, you really gotta to check in on if your deck can cast those, and if it's not worth it. I like the quote, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. It's easy to build, like if I have a sliver deck, let's say, any of the categories we listed above, let's say slivers. I could throw Dockside, Necropotence, Cyclonic Rift, Soul Ring, Rhystic Study, Mystic Remora, Carpet of Flowers, Smothering Tithe, a second copy of Smothering Tithe, just because I can, and then my deck is just going to be, it's going to be diluted with just all of this stuff, and it's all good stuff, but I think at a certain point, you're just not going to have any momentum. You kind of have to have a game plan still. You need a core strategy, so I maybe would, I'm just making this up right now, a heuristic. I think if you have more than 10 completely, generic staples, like not even spells, like permanents, I might think I wouldn't go higher than that. I think you're going to start losing your deck's identity. Unless you have no identity and you're playing like Kenrith, then just get all that good stuff in there.
In theory, you can go EDH rec, pick the top X amount of cards and then just shove them into your deck. But is your deck going to be synergistic? Probably not.
No,
so
probably not.
You want to build towards a certain theme and know that before you start building so you can include only the staples that really help you out.
Yes, and next there's a little bit of an overperformer section. This is, if you're building a WUBRG deck, pretty much these are all cards to consider because they don't see play a ton outside of WUBRG, but they can really do some work. The first one is Bloom Tender and Fabro Elder. They tap for 1 mana of each color of permanents you control, which can be up to 5. So in green, white, or green decks, probably not going to see these, but in WUBRG, your commander probably costs 5 colors. So these things just tap for 5.
There's some mana dorks that also tap for multiple colors. Noble Hierarch and Ignoble Hierarch can tap for 3 each. Deathrite Shaman says that if you use it to exile a land, you get 1 mana of any color. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the World Tree, if you play it, lets your lands tap for 1 mana of any color. Also, with Fist of Suns, you can pay WUBRG instead of your spell's mana cost. So this can help you save on mana cost, and it gives you a little bit of a Joda Archmage Eternal effect.
Yeah, if this card said you can pay 5 colorless instead of your spells, it would basically be in, I don't know. I don't have a percentage. I was going to give you a percentage, but that's silly. It would be in a ton of commander decks if it just said your spells now only cost 5 maximum. And in WUBRG, with perfect or pseudo-perfect mana bases, that's what it says. So you're going to see it all the time, almost no matter what. It does have a wombo combo, super wombo combo time with Morophon of, hey, this creature type only costs WUBRG to cast. Well, it costs WUBRG less with Morophon, so it costs nothing, which is pretty sweet. There's also Bring to Light. It has Converge, and it cares about the colors of mana spent to cast it. If you put all 5 into it, that's a really sick tutor that just tutors whatever spell into play or on the stack. And then we have some cards that actually cost white, blue, black, red, green. First time I've said those colors instead of WUBRG this entire video. This is Primeval Spawn. It's a 10/10. It's got haste. It's got lifelink. You can't cheat it out. And then when it leaves the battlefield, you cast a bunch of cards for free. It's just like one of the go-to big giant monsters for these colors.
Another great big monster for this color is Two-Headed Hellkite. It's 6 mana for a flying menace haste 6/6. That's just when it attacks. You draw 2 cards. That's just a great rate immediately.
It's just a really good rate. Yeah, you don't really have to be dragons or anything specific. You could just play these 2 cards and just profit off of them because they're value city. And then I had to mention one of Mia's favorite WUBRG cards that I think is actually really good.
Invasion of Alara is actually one of my favorite cards in Ramos. When you cast it, you can actually reveal off the top until you get 2 cards that have the mana value of 4 or less. 1 goes into your hand, and 1 you can cast immediately without paying the mana cost. It has 7 toughness on the battle, but if you can flip it, it is value city. It does so much. 1, the back, when you flip it, actually counts as a cast, so it does put all of those counters on Ramos.
Yeah, it's Ramos' best friend because you get 5 counters right away. Ramos can attack it, 5 more counters when you cast the spell, and it draws cards, destroys something, copies something, puts something into play. It's just ridiculous.
Puts counters on things.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty sweet. It almost might be like a pseudo staple in those colors. And Invasion of Alara is really, really sweet. And I hope that you think WUBRG commanders are really, really sweet. Some people don't like building them. I think it's good to challenge yourself to build one WUBRG deck. So find one of those categories, get yourself a deck brewing. And Mia, what video are we sending them to?
We are sending them to the Budget Bombs.
We're sending them to the Budget Bombs. You got to go check it out. And remember that you can still build a solid mana base on a budget.